In this video I want to teach you how to use a scraper and sharpen a scraper, because it's a very, very effective tool, but it is tricky to sharpen. The edge doesn't last a long time and you have to get it right. This is a brand new scraper. It's pretty typical, spring-tempered steel. It's got about average thickness. Some are thicker, some are thinner, more flexible. But the first step in getting a good edge is to file it flat and nice and square with the edges. Now you can make a little jig like this for yourself, a little slot in a block of wood, put a file in it, and you can joint this very effectively. I tend to want to go with a file and just hold it in my sideways. I like to use a fairly fine file, because a fine file will leave a nicer surface that will take less effort to stone. And I just relax, file across the surface. It's very nice for this big wooden surface of the bench to help me to keep this going flat to the work. And I would file until I get a nice sharp edge, which I do have. Now don't get it in your idea that you have to have a flat, straight surface. This is a very effective scraper with lots of different curved surfaces. A little trickier to sharpen because of the curves, but this scraper easily could have a small camber to it or whatever for certain kinds of scraping work. The next step is to hone these edges to bring them up to a sharper and sharper and sharper square corner. That's going to be the edge that we're going to be using to do the work we want to do. Okay. Normally I would file two of the long edges of this scraper and sharpen them at the same time. But you can also sharpen these edges in the ends. And sometimes I actually do use that as a tool for getting into corners and scraping glue and that kind of a thing. So I'll start out on a 500 grit stone. I just hold it vertically and try and work my way along, light pressure. If you find this is hard to do, you can imagine all kinds of blocks you can make to guide your work against the stone to keep yourself nice and square. And just like the back of the blade, I'll do the sides of this at a finer stone. So I'll move to 1000 grit and repeat the process. I want to go until I feel a really, really sharp edge here that's capable of doing some cutting. It takes a while to prepare the edge. Okay, let's go to the last stone, 4000 grit stone. And I do the sides. And the longer you use the scraper and sharpen it, the better this polish gets on the two sides and the edge. And it will last, it will create a better edge and last longer. Just like in a plane blade. That feels pretty good. Now this curved scraper, the honing is exactly the same, only you've got to go over the arc that you're going to be using. And usually you're using a small part of this, so I'll sharpen the area that I need, not the whole thing. Let's see how well we did here in terms of how it works. It should really sort of make a shaving at this point, or it's not really an effective edge yet. And there's a bit of sharpness right there. You can see there's a lot of dust, but it is making shavings. Okay? So let's go on to the next step, which is rolling the burr and creating a more effective cutting edge. But this very square edge with no burr is what I would use to scrape out a varnish or shellac finish. It is very effective, very clean, and something worth knowing about. So the first step If there's a little burr on here already, or I'm replacing the burr, renewing the burr, is to go and use a burnisher to lay down the burr. So you can use a round burnisher, you can use a triangular burnisher. There's actually oval burnishers too, but these will do most of the work you need to do. A round burnisher is useful for a curved scraper, where you want to go around a curved edge. It's easier to maintain the pressure to roll up the burr. I tend to like a triangular burnisher, and that's what I'll use to sharpen my scraper. So the first step is to take some oil. This is Camellia oil, it works fine. Put a little bit of oil on your wood, on your steel, just to lubricate the process. So it's a little bit more gentle on the burr. And you want to work hard on the edge, or if there's a burr here, lay it down. So the idea is, if you have a light burr that you've made, you can roll it down, and roll it back up, roll it down, roll it back up, a series of times. But it's never going to be as sharp as it is the first time. So I'm just laying the burr down and preparing it now to roll the burr up. Now this is the tricky part about a burr, is you want to be gentle, but you want to be firm. And I like to roll it up along the edge, and roll it again along the edge, and a third time along the edge. I'm trying to keep the angle fairly perpendicular, but I'm rolling it as I go. And I've got another edge to do here. Along the edge, along the edge, and along the edge. And this is what the burr looks like. If you roll it up too much, then you've got to work the scraper much lower to the work. It's much more difficult. So I've got a fairly nice fine burr here. That's all I'm looking for. Because I want to be able to renew this several times without having to go and file it and hone it and that kind of thing. So let me clean this off. You want to get all the oil off so it doesn't contaminate your work. And let's see what kind of edge we actually got here. That's about as good an edge as you can ask for. Making nice shavings, not a lot of dust, and as the edge degrades, it will start making more dust. The beauty of a scraper is you can scrape in almost any direction. You can scrape out little bird's eyes, like in this piece of maple, little pieces of tear out or whatever, and you can work in whatever direction you want. And I like the idea that you can feel the way the tool's cutting. Keep quite erect, or bend over less aggressively, and you can work your way in. So let me show you some ways that I might use the scraper. Let's say you've got a spot, like right here, where some tear out is happening when you're trying to plane it. Well, rather than just scrape out that little spot, you want to scrape out a much larger area. So you don't just have a hole there. This is the way I would work. Work around from the outside. And eventually get into the middle. And there you go. Not a dish, but just more level with that little spot of tear out taken out. Another thing about scrapers is you can scrape in any direction. Unlike a plane, there's the best direction. A scraper will work equally well going against the grain as with the grain, as you can see. Now already the edge is degrading a little bit, but not too much. Another thing I like about a scraper is you can control it to cut very accurately in a very precise position if you want to. Or you can use it for more broad cutting to level the surface more on a larger area. Sometimes I pull a scraper, more likely I push a scraper. And the flexing of it gives you the control, it gives you the stability. It's really a plane. It gives you the stability to be able to work. But the problem is the edge doesn't last very long. So when this edge is no longer cutting effectively, I can go and burnish it down again, roll it back up again. And if the burr is small, you can do this 2 or 3 times, and then eventually you'll have to file the edge and renew it completely. So I'm rolling the burr down that I have on here, flattening it right out. And as I said before, there's a certain amount of friction, work hardens the steel, and I can roll it back up again. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. I like a small burr that would be very effective. And let me clean this off and we can see how it works. And here we are with a nice fresh edge, and notice how it's making much less dust than I was before. Mostly nice clean shavings. So try to use the whole blade, don't just use the center. Try and use all parts of the blade. And you have two edges. You have a back edge too. Or you might have a top and a bottom edge as well. So you have 4 cutting edges. A scraper is not necessarily an easy tool to learn how to sharpen, but it's really worth learning how to do it, because it's a tool that will smooth any woods. Small areas where your plane is having tear out, a scraper is the tool to come to your rescue and level it up. Experiment with different burrs, different pressures, different angles, but you'll find that it's very, very flexible in the way you handle it and the way it works. That's one of those tools as a furniture maker that I very much appreciate, because it's so simple but yet so effective.